When the eyes of the world turned toward the Danish royal palace following whispers of betrayal and tension, few expected what came next. For a monarchy built on stoicism, dignity, and centuries of duty, the vulnerability that emerged from behind palace walls wasn't just unprecedented, it was deeply human. At the heart of this emotional unraveling stood Queen Mary and King Frederik, whose seemingly picture-perfect love story took an unexpected and heartbreaking turn. But now, all signs, however subtle, point toward a stunning reconciliation that is playing out before our very eyes. It began with silence, not the loud kind that screams through headlines or scandals, but the quiet void between two people once deeply connected. The tension between Queen Mary and King Frederik didn't explode in public statements or accusations, but rather in absence, glances averted, and moments when they should have stood side by side and didn't. In late 2023, rumors began swirling after King Frederik was spotted without his wedding ring during a solo trip to Spain. Photographers captured more than just a monarch abroad. They documented a lonely figure, walking with a posture that hinted at introspection and regret. Then came the whispers of a mysterious woman in Madrid, an encounter shrouded in speculation but potent enough to pierce the media and ignite a wave of public sympathy for Queen Mary. Australia, her homeland, watched with a mix of concern and loyalty, as if her pain was felt across oceans. The Danish people, known for their composed regard for royalty, were suddenly caught in a swirl of betrayal, confusion, and a desperate need to understand. But as loud as the speculations were, Mary herself remained dignified. And in her silence, her strength spoke volumes. But it wasn't just silence, it was strategy. Mary did not retreat from the public eye. She doubled down on her royal duties, showing up with the same grace and warmth that had endeared her to millions. Yet to the trained eye, something was different. She was more solemn. Her smiles didn't reach her eyes. She wore black more often than before. These subtle cues painted a portrait of quiet heartbreak. Yet even then, she never played the victim. She rose above, not with bitterness, but with poise. And then the shift began. Tiny, almost invisible at first, but undeniably present for those who watched closely. During a winter engagement at Christiansborg Palace, Mary and Frederik appeared together for the first time in weeks. Body language experts dissected every frame. The slight lean of Mary's head toward Frederik, his hand reaching subtly toward hers, the fleeting eye contact that suggested something had changed. These weren't actors playing their part. These were two people who had shared nearly 2 decades of life together, rebuilding, piece by piece, something sacred. Coded in their clothing choices, the couple seemed to send messages only the emotionally attentive could decipher. At a subsequent state banquet, Mary wore an Australian-designed gown paired with a sapphire brooch gifted by Frederik in their early years of marriage, a sentimental nod, surely not a coincidence. She was reclaiming the narrative, and perhaps, inviting him to do the same. When Frederik later joined her at a charity event supporting women's shelters, a cause deeply important to Mary, their physical closeness spoke louder than any public statement could. More telling was the official Christmas photo released by the palace. Unlike previous years where they stood flanked stiffly by their children, this image was warmer, more intimate. Mary stood close to Frederik, his arm wrapped around her waist. Their children beamed, clearly sensing something had changed. This was not just a public relations exercise, this was reconciliation in motion, framed and shared with the world. As royal watchers know, the Danish monarchy is not prone to dramatic displays of affection. So when Frederik was seen gently brushing Mary's hair away from her face during a public appearance in early spring, the gesture went viral. Not because it was grand, but because it was so real. So unscripted, a gesture that belonged not to a king and queen, but to a husband and wife healing through affection and presence. The story deepened further when Mary, during a panel on women's empowerment in Copenhagen, was asked about trust and forgiveness. Her response was calm, almost rehearsed, but her eyes glistened as she said, "Trust is not just given, it is earned again and again. And forgiveness is something we offer when we choose to move forward together, not apart." She didn't mention Frederik. She didn't have to. The entire room understood. The emotional climax came during Queen Margrethe's abdication ceremony, a historical moment that saw Frederik ascend the throne. All eyes were on the new king and queen. But instead of taking separate limelight, Frederik reached for Mary's hand before addressing the crowd. Cameras captured the unspoken message. she was not just by his side, she was at the very core of his reign. From that moment on, reconciliation wasn't just a possibility, it became the palace's silent anthem. The photos released after the coronation further confirmed this. A portrait of Mary gazing lovingly at Frederik, both wearing regal attire but smiling like newlyweds, solidified what many had dared to hope for. The breach had been real, but so was the repair. Insiders whispered that it took late-night conversations, couples therapy, and even long walks in the palace gardens for the wounds to begin healing. Mary had reportedly drawn a firm line: either there would be full transparency going forward, or the crown would have to rest on an entirely different foundation. Frederik, understanding what he stood to lose, made the decision to choose love over ego, and to rebuild the trust that had once been unshakable. And so, with each engagement, each touch, each carefully chosen word and shared glance, Mary and Frederik have rewritten their narrative. Not to erase the past, but to embrace the journey. Royal life may be wrapped in tradition, but at its core are real people with real heartbreaks and real victories. In Queen Mary and King Frederik, we see not just royalty, but resilience. A love that didn't crumble under pressure, but bent, paused, and returned stronger. Their children, too, have become part of this silent reconciliation. Princess Isabella, now blossoming into a poised young royal, has been seen accompanying her parents on joint appearances, radiating pride and unity. Prince Christian's recent birthday portraits showed a family not fractured but fortified. These are the lasting results of two adults who chose healing not just for themselves, but for the future of the monarchy. To the world, Mary and Frederik may appear polished and poised, but those who have looked deeper now understand the profound vulnerability and strength that underpins their recent months. The gestures were tiny, the photos were coded, the confession was quiet, but together, they told a story more powerful than any press release ever could. And now, as Denmark celebrates a new era under King Frederik X and Queen Mary, one truth remains undeniable: theirs is a royal marriage that has survived the test of time, scandal, and trust, and come out stronger. A love not without flaws, but full of forgiveness. A union that, in its humanness, has become even more relatable and revered. So as the couple moves forward, still smiling, still standing together, still rebuilding, one glance, one gesture, one step at a time, viewers across the world are left with a single, lingering question: if even a royal couple can rediscover love after heartbreak, what might we be capable of in our own lives? As Queen Mary and King Frederik continue to navigate the delicate terrain of rebuilding not only their public image but also their private bond, the world watches with renewed curiosity, even admiration. What was once a storm that threatened the very fabric of Denmark's most beloved royal couple has transformed into a narrative of strength, resilience, and quiet commitment. But this reconciliation did not materialize overnight. It is the result of countless subtle actions, emotionally loaded appearances, and deeply personal choices that continue to redefine what modern royalty looks like. One cannot speak of Queen Mary's evolution during this period without acknowledging her transformation into not just a queen but a deeply admired global symbol of dignity and personal strength. During some of her most challenging moments, Mary didn't retreat. She became more visible, more involved, and more influential. Her engagements focused heavily on causes close to her heart: women's rights, mental health, and childhood development. But it wasn't just what she did, it was how she did it. In every speech, her voice remained steady, but her eyes sometimes betrayed the weight of personal turmoil. And still, she carried on, not just as a royal, but as a woman choosing perseverance. Meanwhile, King Frederik had his own reckoning to face. A man born into privilege and responsibility, he had long been known for his charm, athleticism, and deep love for his family. But beneath the surface lay a quieter struggle, a tension between public duty and private identity. When whispers of alleged indiscretions emerged, it wasn't just his reputation on the line, it was the foundation of trust between him and the woman who had stood beside him since 2004. According to palace insiders, the weeks that followed were filled with soul-searching. It's said Frederik began meeting regularly with advisors and confidants, not to craft a media spin, but to confront the realities of his actions. The monarchy could not afford a fracture at its core, nor could his family. And then came the reappearance, the subtle yet profoundly telling moment when the couple walked side by side again, not as distant figures fulfilling duty, but as partners silently affirming a shared decision to move forward. The shift was evident. His eyes lingered longer on hers. Her body language softened. They were building trust not with grand statements, but with the very simplicity of showing up, together. Even their children began to reflect the change. In one rare candid moment caught by photographers at a royal garden event, young Princess Josephine ran to her father, laughing, while Mary watched with a smile that seemed to melt away months of tension. It wasn't just a family photograph, it was visual proof that what was once broken was beginning to mend. And it wasn't just the children reflecting this. Courtiers noticed a return of warmth in the halls of Amalienburg Palace. The previously frosty atmosphere, marked by separate schedules and different wings, began to thaw. Mary's fashion choices, long admired by royal watchers, took on deeper meaning during this period. At one gala event, she wore a regal emerald gown previously seen during one of her and Frederik's happier anniversaries, a choice many interpreted as a subtle nod to the better days they were trying to reclaim. In another public appearance, she wore a necklace known to be one of Frederik's earliest gifts, something she had not worn for years. These were not random wardrobe decisions. In royalty, every choice is coded, every detail intentional. Mary was telling a story, a silent, graceful one of forgiveness, unity, and hope. There were also joint interviews where they carefully crafted a message of continuity. In one such moment, Frederik was asked about the importance of family and tradition. With Mary seated beside him, he said, "You only realize the true strength of something once it has been tested. And in our case, we're stronger because we've had to rebuild, together." The camera panned to Mary's face, revealing the slightest nod and a smile that spoke of quiet agreement. It was the first time he publicly acknowledged the turbulence without detailing the storm, a mark of maturity and reconciliation. Behind the scenes, efforts to stabilize their bond continued with equal intensity. Trusted sources revealed that they had begun attending confidential counseling sessions, not just as a couple but also involving family therapy for the benefit of their children. They didn't want the pain of the past to become a shadow over the future of Denmark's next generation of royals. These private efforts were not publicized, they weren't meant to be. But in today's interconnected world, where palace staff and insiders speak in whispers, the truth found its way out. And it painted a picture not of scandal, but of genuine commitment. Royal watchers have also noted a distinct difference in how Mary and Frederik now engage with each other in public. In previous years, their interactions were more formal, measured and regal. Now, there are moments of spontaneous laughter, brief but meaningful touches, and expressions of mutual admiration. During a spring state visit to Norway, Mary was overheard telling a foreign dignitary, "He's been my rock this year, and I'm proud of how far we've come." That simple sentence, shared in a brief moment of candor, was later quoted in newspapers around the globe. It was a declaration not just of unity but of survival. And while many assumed that the Danish royal family would prefer to bury the past and press forward in silence, it seems that Queen Mary and King Frederik have embraced transparency, albeit in their own way. Their social media presence has subtly shifted, too. The royal Instagram account, once reserved for formal updates and stiff portraits, began to feature more relaxed, candid images. Mary with a sun hat in a Danish vineyard, Frederik hiking with their sons, a family barbecue captured in warm, sun-drenched tones. The monarchy was humanizing itself, and it was working. Perhaps the most poignant signal of renewed unity came during the recent unveiling of a statue dedicated to Queen Ingrid, Frederik's grandmother and one of the most beloved figures in Danish royal history. The event was steeped in symbolism, honoring a legacy of strong royal women while subtly inviting Mary into that lineage. During his speech, Frederik turned to Mary and, with visible emotion, said, "You are the future of this monarchy, and everything I do with you beside me." It was not just a line for the cameras, it was a public declaration of recommitment. Observers also point to the couple's increasing focus on joint causes. They've championed environmental protection together, visited refugee camps, supported the arts, and most notably, launched a new mental health initiative for Danish youth. These projects are not simply acts of philanthropy, they're collaborative, hands-on efforts that show a couple working in tandem once again, sharing purpose as well as love. And yet, perhaps the most compelling aspect of their reconciliation is how understated it has been. There have been no magazine covers declaring dramatic reunions. No tabloid exposés promising explosive revelations. Instead, the healing has unfolded in plain sight for those patient enough to see it. A lingering look, a coordinated gesture, a quiet moment of togetherness after a storm. As they continue forward, Denmark seems to be embracing not just their leadership, but their humanity. The monarchy, after all, thrives not only on tradition but on connection. By showing vulnerability, Mary and Frederik have rewritten what it means to be royal in the modern world. They've shown that even amidst immense pressure, personal pain, and public scrutiny, it's possible to rediscover intimacy, trust, and hope. Their love story may have been bruised, but it was never broken. And now, more than ever, it stands as a symbol of what love can endure, and what it can become when both hearts are willing to fight for it. So, dear viewers, as you reflect on the deeply moving journey of Queen Mary and King Frederik, one question remains. In a world so quick to discard what's difficult, are we still willing to fight for what's truly meaningful? Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share this video if you believe in love that lasts, stories that matter, and the strength that comes from standing together, even after the storm.